Good morning, my friends. Welcome to today's episode, today's training this week, or today rather. It's episode 16 of Reclaiming Yourself. So I bounce around a bit throughout the various series that I'm doing because I do this based a lot of times on inspiration, on what is really talking to me and what I see is coming forward for my students, my clients, my community, which is most of all of you. So, yeah. So that's where this gets inspired from. So again, I'm excited to have you here. If you're new to me, I'm Marshall Berkshire. Now, codependents rediscover their well-being and happiness after narcissistic abuse and help them accomplish that through 3 specific steps. First step is restoring their safety, sanity, and self, which helps them heal the trauma bond. Second step is helping them come to know, love, and live who they are, which empowers them to create the third step, which is creating happy, sustainable relationships in their lives. So that's what I do. Before we get started today, I need to get this shared out to the community here real quick. So that's what I'm going to do here. And the community is your safe haven, where you can find guidance, tools, and support in your journey beyond codependency. The link is above on Facebook, below on YouTube. And if you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and we'll get you, thank you for subscribing. All right, so let's see here. My brain has been lately it's been I'm trying to be perfect at this, which makes me a little flustered. So I'm just going to do this the best way I know how, which is my own way. So here we go. All right. How to give back what isn't yours. So in codependency, we tend to absorb other people in certain ways. We absorb their feelings, we absorb their perspectives, their opinions, their rules, their judgments, their assumptions, their worldview. We absorb their approval and their rejection. We make it personal. Oh, sorry about that. We make it personal. We make it significant to ourselves. We use these things as a way of orienting ourselves to the world in hopes that we can do it the right way. We can be the perfect person. We can earn love. We can earn belonging. We can earn value by doing it this way. This is what I call external orientation. We are orienting ourselves outside of ourselves. So I'm looking to understand myself and the world through someone else's eyes rather than my own perspective, my own eyes, my own sense of things, my own opinion, my own truth, my own reality. This is how we absorb other people because we are trying to become what we think they want us to be. This is what people pleasing is about. This is a fawn response in reaction to a sense of threat, losing love, attachment, connection, a means to meeting our needs or having shelter and safety in our world. It is a core component of codependency and even love addiction and trauma bonding because love addiction and trauma bonding are extremely strong external orientations that are bound by chemistry, specifically the dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin hits we get from their approval and the adrenaline cortisol hits we get from their abuse and their discard. So it's a very prominent feature we have, and it's actually something that's really natural to us as children. Infants, babies, toddlers, young children are externally oriented. They're seeking themselves through their parents. They're seeking to understand the world through their parents' eyes because they don't really have a sense of their own reality, their own self yet. They don't have what I call internalized governance or internalized orientation towards reality yet. Now, in a healthy dynamic, the parent is going to reflect back to the child what the child is experiencing, feeling, sensing. It's going to inquire of the child what it thinks, what it feels, what it wants, what it likes, what it doesn't, things like that. And that helps the individual, it helps that child become internally oriented and become real to themselves. On codependent dynamics, abusive dynamics, narcissistic parents, even meaningful but neglectful parents don't properly supply this reflection to the child's still going to remain externally oriented to some degree. Now, we tend to mature out of external orientation and become internally oriented through our teen years. This is the big rebellion where we start finding ourselves and defining ourselves and discovering these things and all of that. That often doesn't happen for survivors of narcissistic parents because we have to survive. Our brain only has so much capacity, and if it feels threatened in its survival, it's going to utilize that capacity to keep itself alive rather than go through its discovery and maturation processes of becoming who it is. Right? So this is where external orientation comes from. This is why we still have it. And the way we begin to work out external orientation, become internally oriented, is built on the premise of becoming what's called sovereign and self-referencing. And I teach you how to do that in the Heal Yourself strategy, and I take that deeper and more advanced processes in the Know Yourself strategy. This is where we can get to how do we give back what isn't ours? And this starts with sovereignty. It's identifying what isn't ours and what is. And this breaks down to 4 simple components: feelings, desires, choices, and actions. You can add to that energy, thoughts, opinions, desire. It all wants and needs fall under desires, but you can add those components to it. And what happens is you start to define a yard or a territory that is yours and a territory that is theirs. This is how you start to know what is yours and what isn't. So if someone gives you their opinion about you, it's theirs because their opinion resides in its origin is in their yard, and they're throwing it into your yard. You can give it back. Oh, that's a nice opinion. Good luck working that out. They have a feeling arise in them about something. That's in their yard, not yours. They throw it into your yard. You pick it up and give it back to them, saying, well, that's nice. Good luck working that out. You feel their energy coming into your yard, into your body. You feel yourself taking it in. Observe it. Notice the space between you and that energy, you and that emotion, you and that thought, you and that opinion, you and that approval, that rejection. And then give it back to the yard. I sometimes visualize it moving back into their yard and planting itself there. And then I see and sense into the space in my body between me and that person, me and that thing. This is how I give it back. Because I'm not responsible for regulating, managing, fulfilling, or otherwise taking care of that person's yard. It's their yard. I am accountable to and impact my behaviors and choices might have on that person, and that's highly contingent or dependent on the context, the relationship type, commitments that are involved in that, agreements that were made, things of that nature. But overall, this is how we can first identify what's ours and what's theirs, and then we can return it. We can give it back to them. We can give back to them like I gave back to my parents the critical rejection voices in my head. I'm like, that's my mom's, that's my father's. That's not mine. That's my stepmom's. That's not mine. Because they would tell me those things. I give them back. I would give back to people their rejection of me. Oh, that's your criticism, not mine. Work that out. Or do whatever you want with it. It's none of my business what you do with it. It's your yard. And this is a practice. This is an active choice. So I give back the emotional responsibility somebody puts on you. They're really upset. Well, they're upset with you or at something you did. You can give it back to them. You don't have to regulate it because you're not responsible for the feeling. You're responsible to the impact, which means, hey, I can see why that upsets you. I can hold space with that. I can empathize with that and own it. What would you like done differently? That's owning the impact. They're still responsible for managing their emotion. It's theirs. It's in their yard. It's for them to explore, to resolve, to understand, and to nurture. This breaks us free of being enmeshed in other people's yards. It gets us out of the habit of orienting towards them and gets us into the habit of orienting from ourselves. So now I can see their yard clearly, and now I have a thought and a feeling, a perspective about what they're doing. I'm like, wow, that's not mine. I'm going to leave that over there. This allows us to create a lot of space between us and them. And then in that space, we can create consensual connection, which allows us to remain autonomous. We get to stay in our yard, they get to stay in theirs, and we have this mutually shared space between us where we can meet and connect, communicate, share, and grow together. This is the magic of being able to identify what is ours, what is not, and being able to give it back. The converse, or the opposite of this, is being able to identify what's yours and retrieve it. Bring it home. Bring home your value from someone else's approval and rejection. Bring home your sense of worth. Bring home your perspective from theirs. Bring home your hurts. Bring home your pain and say, hey, yeah, I need to care for this aspect of myself. I need to bring love into this space. This is part of how we reclaim ourselves from their world. And we come to anchor and be within our own sovereignty, our own well-being. It's also how we start to really know ourselves, love ourselves, and live who we are, which is really all about that sovereignty being lived in a really deep way. So that's what we do. That's how we identify what's ours and what's not. And that's one way of giving it back. I visualize it, and then I sense into that space between me and it. Sometimes people will do a verbal thing. They'll be like, hey, I return this to sender. That's an access consciousness tool there. It's like, I return this to sender, or I realize that this is not mine. I give this back to you. And with love, or with freedom, or with whatever kind of thing we might have, we would want to share or give with that, if anything. So there's different ways of returning it to sender, but you don't have to own it. You don't have to be responsible for it, because you're not innately responsible for it. They are. It's their yard, their creation, so they get to manage it. Now, this can feel really scary to do, especially if we have experienced a sense of connection, belonging, and proximity with a person because we've absorbed those things from them. It gives us a sense of being close to them. So it can feel like we have a lot of space between them and yourself, and that's okay. That's a place where you can build connection instead of absorption, connection instead of enmeshment, and be able to create a mutually safe and expansive connection based on companionship, support, play, and intimacy. That allows you to be you, allows them to be them, and allows you to cultivate energy, to do what you need to do for you, to have a real sense of warmth and belonging that isn't contingent on being fixing them, regulating them, pleasing them, taking care of them in some way. So that's an adventure all on its own. So there you go, my friends. That is today's training. Go out there, give back what isn't yours, retrieve what is. Allow yourself to reclaim yourself and your freedom in this space. And remember that you're worth knowing, loving, and keeping. And I will see you guys in our next training. Have a good day.